So, hello, we're live tonight. Welcome, everybody. It's Joe Faulkner here. Hello, Joe.
Hello.
So I'm just going to introduce Joe. He is a mountain instructor from Nav for Adventure. That's his company. So he teaches navigation, he teaches mountaineering skills, mountain skills, and he does the safety for events, and he's got his own races as well. And the incredible thing about Joe is that he has completed the Dragon's Back race, which is 5 days, 220 miles across the mountainous spine of Wales. He's done that no less than 4 times. Woo! That is incredible achievement in itself, I think. And so Joe's here tonight, the week before the Dragon's Back race, to tell us all a bit about how to be successful on the race, and a bit about his training, and a little bit about the hardest parts that you might want to prepare for, essential last-minute preparation as well for anyone actually doing the race this Saturday, and loads of training tips for people doing it at any time. So, without further ado, Joe, I'm going to ask you your first question, which is from Rob Jordan, who's one of my patrons. Thank you very much for the question, Rob. He says, what got you into the mountains and navigation in the first place?
I grew up in Shropshire, South Shropshire, which is hilly, and from an early age I was doing scout activities and outdoor activities at school. So quite literally from the age of 7, 8. So I've always been doing stuff and using maps from when I was young, yeah.
And so was it your parents that got you into it then, or did you just get booted out to scouts and told to fend for yourself?
The family, I mean, to be honest, there's an event called the Longmynd Hike, which is a 50-mile hike, challenge walk. It's 50 odd years old, 52 I think. It's based on the Fellsman, and it's sort of my home event, and there's a big strong family connection. So as soon as I was 16, I did it. I was expected to do it. So, I was clocking up 50-mile ultra, 16, 17, 18, as a fat walker playing rugby, and then I got a bit skinnier. So I did that most years. I don't know, I've probably done about 28 or 30 in the last 40 years. So it's always been there. It's not like I started to nav 5 years ago.
Yeah, so you started really, really young.
Yeah.
And obviously you were there at the very first Dragon's Back race, which was in 1992. What was that like compared to racing nowadays? Can you kind of describe the event for us?
Yeah, it's very different. There's a very good, if you watch the original footage, Trans World Sport film, I watched it last 10 days ago because I was on a bit of a cough and a cold, and I was just indulging some downtime. It's well worth watching. It looks really dated. In some ways, it doesn't feel like I was in it, and you don't really see me, but you do see my hands and my feet occasionally, my kettle brew. Different, yeah. 57 people, basically in pairs. One solo Swede. It was ahead of the curve in terms of multi-day racing. There'd been loads of 2-day mountain marathons. So I wasn't quite sure, no one was quite sure what would happen on day 3 and day 4. But top world-class athletes. Some people think it was just a bunch of sort of amateurs, but the people at the front end were top of the game. Martin and Helen, and Mark McDermott. Mark McDermott, not Mark Patel. Adrian Belton, Walsh, and I can't remember the names now. Of course, Wendy Dodds and Sue Welsh and myself and Doobie. So, 57 people, a lot smaller. It would look really, really amateurish if you watch the video. But I suggest people want to find out about it, do seek that out. You should share it, Claire. It's very, it's the same sort of race, but, basically nearly a tenth as small, 57 people set off.
Yeah.
And about half finished.
I've just got some pictures here just on YouTube. I've just Googled it so that people can have a look at the old pictures from the race. So here's one. Yeah, it's Helen and Martin and somebody else as well running along, looking like they're having fun. It's just a really low-res picture. I'll just put a few up so that people can see, well, mainly the retro running gear that everybody's running in, because there's a lot of nice purple going on here, and purple and green. So
Purple 2020, Claire. You mark my word.
Yeah. And then
Surface power.
And then the race was really significant, wasn't it? Because I've just put a picture up here at the side of the screen of Helen and Martin finishing on day 5 in the ruins of the castle there. And it was really significant, wasn't it? Because it was the first time a woman had won the race outright, albeit in a mixed pair, but as a woman. So what do you have to say about that in terms of how big it was a deal back then?
Nothing at all. It wasn't a big deal. Amongst us, we knew that Helene was one of the strongest athletes. Mixed pair from winning the first Dragons back, but the gender issue is something which I really don't make a big issue of. It's a difficult subject to talk about. I just don't see it as an issue. There's always been people or female athletes who have done really well. There's less of them. If you go back through the 50s and 60s, there's always been someone like that. It's one of those things that irks me. Jasmine Paris did an amazing job on the spine, for example. Not surprised she won, because she's a mountain athlete and has endurance and all the skills. No disrespect to Ian Keith, for example, and Eugenie. They've done it 3 or 4 or 8 times, They're just different. So there's always been, if you go into cycling, for example, Beryl Burton was beating all the men in the 50s and 60s. We didn't talk about it. So the gender thing, I just think is overrated.
Yeah, you just turn up as a person and you run your race and you come wherever.
You've done my races, my events. We don't have any prizes, we don't have positions. I wouldn't even give out first female. Like Jasmine, for example, finished second. I've had females finish first. I wouldn't even report it like that. You talk about the gender issue in this day and age. Why are we talking about it? We're all equal. That's my slam. Going back to 92, because that's the question you asked, all the infrastructure was done by the military. Now, they couldn't get their heads around that there was women in the race to start with. Right?
Old school.
They couldn't believe that in the top 3 pairs, or 5 pairs, because Wendy Dodds and Sue Walsh were also there in the top 6 pairs. Yeah? Big sorts that, 25% is female, at more. I couldn't believe that she was so glamorous, to be honest. But we're talking about squaddies in 1992. But in the bigger picture, they did an amazing job. They produced amazing food for their mobile field kitchens. But it was like a coming together of 2 different worlds, because there was a little nucleus who sort of knew each other, and we were very competent at what we did, and they were competent at what they did. They weren't very good at plotting grid references, to be honest. But it came together, and it was iconic, because Rob Howard took some amazing pictures, 2 or 3 really iconic pictures. But you should talk to Martin Stone about it as well, because people always talk about Helen's carrying Martin's rucksack and this and that. They carried each other's rucksacks as equals.
Yeah.
It really does. You can tell perhaps from the tone of my voice, this gender thing is just so hyped up.
Yeah. I think it is inspiring though, because there is a definite disparity physical-wise between men and women. You can't deny that men are physically stronger, but it's when you come into the mountains and you introduce all these other variables like navigation, like sleep deprivation, like long-distance endurance, that's when the gender differences, physical differences, become less pronounced, and that's when you start to play with more of an even playing field.
Women apply themselves better.
Well, that's a bit sexist.
Like for our courses, 65% of our courses across the board, female. Because they wanted to get things to them. They don't blag it. They're organised, they just feel the way, they apply themselves, they pace themselves, they look after themselves better. But I just don't see it as an issue. It's a nightmare as an organiser awarding those trophies, but unfortunately it doesn't bother me, it doesn't involve me.
Yeah. Well, let us move on to talk a little bit about how you trained for the race as well, because I'm really intrigued, because 2 years ago I went to the Dragon's Back race to kind of congratulate everybody on day 4, and you were there doing your 4th race, which is incredible. And I was asking you how you trained, and you literally laughed in my face, and I was like, all right, Joe, you must do some training. So I want to know, like, what training that you did for the 1992 race, and how has it changed the way you train? Because that was more than 20 years ago now. It's nearly 30 years ago now. I'm not good at maths, so it's probably 15 years ago by now. So how has your training changed? I know you'd say you don't do any, but you must do a little bit. You must get out a bit.
Yeah, well, 92 was quite a stroke of luck because I was pretty fit. I was invited to do the race with Steve Dubienix in mid-July. We were at a party. I just finished doing the Wainwrights in the year. Me and my friends set off to do all the Wainwrights, just tick them off during the year, the calendar year. And as it happened, I got set to in sort of May, June into July, and I finished them in mid-July. And Steve Doobie, who was a sort of a friend of a friend, told me about the race and asked me to pair up, and I thought, well, I'll do it. So that was my training. So between July, and the race was in September then, I sort of was fit. I probably didn't do much. It's just because I was used to going out 5 days a week. I averaged about 5 hours a day, 5 days a week for the last 5 weeks. Leading up to the end of my Wainwrights. Put in context, Steve Berghaus did them all in 6 days. But.
And was that, so were you doing 5 days a week working then? Or was this on top of your work as well?
Top of my work. So I was working, in the last 5 weeks, the reason why the rate speeded up was I was working part-time. I got laid off from a training job, so I was on reduced hours. And I was just cruising around the lake, sort of living frugally and ticking these Wainwrights because I was young and motivated then. So that got me fit for 92, and I've been on a slippery slope ever since. But
yeah, and so you were doing that just like bobbing about, but obviously by 2012 you were probably a bit more busy with your work and everything like that. How did your training go for that race?
Well, I'm still doing stuff. I'm still doing the core of my 35 years has been mountain marathons, 2-day mountain marathons, which I think is crucial. The skills and the attitude you get from doing a 2-day mountain marathon. I'm talking Carrymores, Ons, Kims, Lambs, that sort of thing. Because it teaches lots of stuff. It gets you up in the hills, gets you up and down, rough ground, packing light, and yeah, I've done all sorts, all what has become all the ultra scene. Howard hobbles, all that sort of stuff. I said along in hike most years until I was probably 40. And then I sort of don't do it. But I still work outdoors, so a lot of the time I'm just walking up and down hills, but fairly slowly, but as I said in that video before. But it's time on the feet. So go back to March, we had 2 weekends in North Wales, sort of Dragons Back related. One was an official recce, and one before was our own little workshop. In between, I had a week in Exmoor, working down there. And I was doing 12-hour days, just sussing out and about on Exmoor. And one day I clocked up 7,000 feet. On Exmoor, the highest point's 501 metres. So that's what gets you fit. I'm still not running any great distance, and I'm going to suffer on the flat because I can't run. There is this, I'm not joking, I do not go out running, right? But I go out on the hills, the sort of Bob Graham pace. I might pace some Bob Graham pace and things like that. And I cope. I'm trying to be totally honest. The last 18 months I've got into doing spin in an effort to try and get some aerobic capacity into my lungs. And I've enjoyed it. But as you know, I've done a lot of adventure racing as well, sort of multi-sport and expedition racing, up to 5 days, 6 days racing. So again, you're doing those, and the head challenge, the old school head challenge where you're racing for 5 days. So that's always been my forte, the multi-day stuff, or the continuous stuff. So going back to 92, Martin says it in the video, people didn't really know what's going to happen on day 3 and day 4. But it was untested, but people were fine. We were all cruising.
People just got on with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you're less of the I'm going to run it and more of an expedition pace, like I'm just going to keep going, jog the downhill bits.
I'm even so worried because if you see these sort of clips of me in the various films, like Hugh Jack Brassington's film, there's me plodding up a hill, and I look so fat and so slow. I look like I'm a tourist going past people, but I'm actually moving. I'm actually moving quite fast. I'll go slowly up the hills and trundle down them. So I used to be a fairly standard fell runner. Through the 80s and 90s, I was fell racing week in, week out. So I can still go down the hills fairly well. And that's what people are going to suffer on the driving spot, especially on days 1 and days 2. So it's all round hill skills. I've done road running, I've done a 24-hour track race. I've done probably 8 or 9 road marathons over the years. But it's the time in the hills, the mountain expedition type stuff, which has given me the base fitness, and I've still got it, I hope.
Yeah, fingers crossed for this year's race, which is going to be your 5th time. It sounds like you kind of have it all in the bag, and you haven't done much running, but you've done your CV and you go out all the time. Is there any sort of mental side to your training? Do you sort of, how do you prepare yourself mentally for? It's a big challenge ahead, no matter that you've done it 4 times before. How do you prepare yourself?
Yeah, I've got the advantage in some ways because I'm a disadvantage because I know what's coming. I feel for the people who are going to get basically poked between the eyes because there's going to be 20% of people on day 1, day 2 who are just going to get beaten by it. And it's a shame because they're fit, they're capable, but they perhaps just haven't got their heads around the terrain and the soft skills involved here. But that's going to happen. That happens in a lot of races. But mentally, yeah, I mean, someone asked me years ago, like in expedition racing, what you do when you have a tough time. You have low periods, and it's even worse in a team adventure race when there's 4 of you, and someone's having a really bad patch, and then you might get a puncture, and then you get another puncture, and then it rains, and you get those really bad times, and then you think. You just laugh out loud now and think, well, it'll probably get more shit and then it'll get good again. You'll wake up, you'll go through the night and wake up in the dawn and life's different. So, suck it up, really.
Yeah, suck it up and just keep going. I'm just intrigued about the whole 20% of people dropping out on day 1 of the Dragon's Back race because it is so far. It's like the Welsh 3000ers basically, isn't it? And Crib-Goch as well, right at the end. So what's your best advice to those first timers who are going, how do I get through day 1? What do people do? What's the biggest mistake that they make and have to quit?
I don't know. I don't know what the mistake is. I mean, to be brutally honest, some people might have entered a race which is beyond them.
That's what I do.
I have to be very careful because people say I'm going to be elitist, but there's races around the world, whether it's Barclay or some of Mark Cobain's races where it's impossible to finish, and people seem to like this challenge of going and trying something which is impossible. I'm all for pushing your limits and pushing your boundaries, but the 3 elements of adventure, which stuck me years ago from my Out Bound days, is you should have a realistic chance of success, realistic and of getting things done. You should have good companionship as well, and that can be with yourself. And uncertainty of outcome. So if it's a given, if it's easy, we do the park run every weekend in 25 minutes, then it's not really pushing you, is it? So I get it. I get the sort of pushing yourself on, but you've got to know the stuff. I feel for some of the foreign competitors who will come in. And they all talk about the birds, and it just eats them because of the roughness of the ground.
Yeah.
I can't advise them to do anything else, but sorry, up for it.
Yeah.
The other more practical side, there were people who go too fast, too early. Everybody's really concerned about cut-offs. The cut-offs into the glidders, from Ogwen into the glidders, yeah, it's tight. in terms of time on your feet, but it's realistic, and so you've got to get through that. And also you've got to get through that and finish day one and be in a state that you can look after yourself and get up and do day two, because it just keeps coming. And that's where there'll be people on steep learning curves as to what to do during the day, immediately after the end, and in the evening. Because it's a stage race, but the clock basically starts at 7 a.m. on 7? On Monday? And it finishes, you sort of stop racing at sometime on Friday night. So even the overnight is race time. It's not like sitting around doing now. You should be recovering, you've got to eat, you've got to sleep, stuff like that. And I think people hemorrhage time in lots of different ways. But they learn.
Yeah.
I'm not being very explicit, am I?
Yeah, no, it's good. I just want to get some tips so that people can ace the Dragon's Back race. So it seems to me like training on rough terrain is a biggie. Getting lots of hill days in, being in the mountains basically is the best way to train for a mountainous race. Who knew?
I'm absolutely gobsmacked the amount on social media, the amount of people have been out spending hours recceing past the course. I know loads of people don't know all. And that's great. I mean, and I just hope they apply it.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, you'd think if you've recceed the whole course and you can do that, you just got to do it a bit quicker for the race, back to back, and that's what you do.
At race pace, we came up with this term, what's it called, rather than chasing cut-offs, which seems to be a trendy thing to do. And it's all that big sort of, I'm chasing cut-offs and I'm just going to do this. We came up with safe completion time. Self-completion CP. So you're comfortably inside the cut-offs, but you sort of pace it. There's no point burning yourself out on day one or day two and damaging yourself. You can break yourself, and that's certain things you can't repair. Feet, stomach, and head. You've got to look after your feet, because once your feet are broken, you can't really repair them. Stomach issues come and go. Appetite comes and goes. Worst case scenario, you can be throwing up. 18 hours, 24 hours, in the space of 5 days, it will go. I learned that from adventure racing. One of our teammates, day 2, was always sick. We spent 18 hours not keeping food down. We moved on slowly. Day 3, 4, 5, firing on all cylinders. But the other thing is your head. So feet is the most important. Stomachs, that's a side issue. The great thing of nutrition and hydration. Head, you can fix your head in seconds. So that's a mental thing. That's an emotional thing. It probably is the hardest thing to do. I suppose that's where I've got the advantage, because I know what's coming, but equally so, knowing what's coming isn't always the best.
You know what's going to hurt most. So, are you able to say...
why should things hurt?
Huh?
Why should things hurt?
Why should things hurt?
Yeah.
Because you're just doing a lot with them.
If you're training and prepared, they shouldn't hurt massively, should they?
Yeah, not massively, no. If something goes wrong, then maybe yes. But, yeah they shouldn't hurt too much. Yeah.
Next question, move on.
Yeah, so we have a question from Guy Greater-X, who wants to know what the hardest part of the race is, and some tips for Crib Goch, the ridge. It's a knife-edge ridge. Let's just get some photos up of the Dragon's Back race here. Oh no, that's the old Dragon's Back race. The Dragon's Back race ridge here. So I'm just showing some pictures now on the screen with you of the Crib Goch ridge. Oh no, that's Vassos. Any tips for doing Crib Goch at the end of the day, and what is the hardest part of the Dragon's Back overall, do you think?
Crib Goch's a bit which freaks people out. Crib Goch freaks people out. If you're scared of heights, first go. It's hyped up as well. I've been along it 3 times. 3 times this spring with people.
Hello.
Who said that?
Joe's wife.
That's it.
Hi.
What was I saying?
Where's my tea?
Official recce. We had a sort of late, well not late, but we had some snow and we couldn't do it, and we could tail the day. But I've done it with 3 times since with people, and every time I've been up with people, they've been really anxious about doing it. And once they've done it in reasonable weather, they found it really quite straightforward. So it's the theory is worse than the actual doing of it. In terms of actual practicalities, you go up, 20 minutes, and then it steepens up into a little wall where you're scrambling, sort of, how to describe it, up to sort of 2 stories of steep ladderish type stuff, all very solid holes. And all of a sudden it's like, ooh. And that's in the general mountaineering sort of fraternity, what we call a wally stopper, because that's where people get to. If they don't like that, they should turn back. So I've been there several times when people do this the right way. But you get up that, you keep it eased off, and there's lots of bits to it. When you get on the so-called knife edge, and again, a lot of the videos that people put up with fisheye lenses make it look horrendous. It's steep on the right-hand side, and the wind tends to come from the right-hand side. So if you stay just left, so imagine going on the roof with your hands on the ridge tiles and your feet just off the left. That's the best way from it. So the top is really solid generally. The right-hand side's steep, don't want it generally. The left-hand side is just like a slopey roof, and it's got lots of loose shale further down. You won't fall off that side. You might slide off in snow, but it's very unlikely. People just fall off the side. So it's just getting confident. Been up there, let's say 3 times, people with big shoes on, poles in their hands, put your poles away, put your map away, put your selfie stick away, and move. And it's quite 35, 40
Don't
minutes.
Put the selfie stick away. What are you saying, Joe?
I have to tell people, put your sticks away. I won't use sticks on day one at all. I won't take sticks on day one.
Yeah.
Because it's just too much rough ground. But people still take the sticks.
Yeah.
That's how to do crib golf. Just get it done.
Yeah. That's crib golf. And so for you, crib golf is obviously not the hardest part of the race like it would be for some people who aren't used to the exposure. What would your hardest part of the race be? Geographically? Either aspect of the whole race or actual section of the race.
I think the worst part of the race, to be honest, is on Nameless Mountain, Tower and Hendra. So on day 3, after Cadridras, there's like a small range of hills before you drop down to Mac, McCullough, and they sort of are bigger than they appear. And this is like Wednesday morning basically, so you're not quite halfway, and that's when people are really at the lowest. And there's an entrance back as well onto Nameless Mountain, and that's where you see people and the cut-offs are looming. So people always talk about Criblock and Snow, and Cadbury, which is a nice grassy ridge run really. Once you get south of Mac and you cross the W, I think it's the W road, you're into Mid Wales and South Wales, and it's like the start. It's the end of the start and the beginning of the end, if you see. But days 3, day 1 is hard because of what it is, the Criblock and Snow. Day 2 is the hardest because it's got the most technical ground and all sorts, and it's quite long. It's longer than day 1. Day 2 is harder than day 1, and day 2 is the hardest, right? But day 3 is longer.
Is day 2 the Rinogs?
Yeah. So the mountains. So you're going up to the mountains.
Really rough ground, no paths, etc.
Yeah. Well, there didn't used to be any paths. There are now. And then when you drop down to sea level, you cross the estuary, and then you climb some rough ground and round to the back of the Moorwinds, and then 2 Moorwinds, and a bit more. Different finish this time. So rather than coming around Panoramic Walk and drop across the estuary, just use railway path. A nice flat 4K of gravel track. There's a good pub just 2 miles from the end as well.
Yeah. Oh, cool. There was a question on the live chat as well earlier. It was about pubs. Let me just find it for you. It was Jacqueline Cooper. She says, how many pints would you recommend the night before you set off, Joe?
Not with Mick.
And
I'm not going to have any, to be honest. I was challenged by I'm having 3 or 4 weeks without drinking because I was told I would lose 1.5 stone. I've actually put on 4 pounds. But I just cut back a bit. But we are going. Some of us are going for a what should we call it? The Last Supper on the Sunday night in a very good bar in Carnarvon, and so resistant. It can be quite challenging not to have a point. But having not drunk for 3 weeks, then why spoil it now?
Yeah,
but, drink in moderation anyway.
I think that's harder than the Dragon's Back race, not drinking, I think, for the month.
But we did. Over the years, I've used a pint or two before a race. My best 100 miler was powered by Guinness.
Exactly.
I was like one too many. The first 30 miles were feeling quite queasy. The second 30 miles was great, and I was firing all cylinders for last. But mainly because I paced it well.
Well, the drinking.
Now the running. I'm a great believer in negative splits as well. Run the second half faster, but it's because the days are so different on the Dragon's Back, you can't say where the halfway point is. Some people it will be coffee time on Thursday.
Yeah.
But statistically, if you get through day 3, you'll finish.
Cool, that's good to know. I've got a sort of a controversial question here on the live chat from Mark C, and he says, "Do you ever think you're too old for a tough race?"
Well, there's old people that me.
It wasn't me that said that. It was Mark C. Blame him.
It's just a number. Age is just a number. A bit like male and female is just a sex. If there's people older than me, I've got a lot of miles on my clock. My body, my knee, my back's really bad, as you know. But there's older people than me around. Tim Laney, for example.
Wendy Dodds, for example, in 2012, doing it age 61.
Yeah. But if you go on Facebook, I'm 69, so that's all right.
You are not 69. You're in your 50s.
Yeah.
How old were you in 1992 doing that? Doing the first one?
I'm not giving the game away.
I was trying to trick you then. Yeah, so age is just a number.
I'm mid-50s. I was 30 when I did the first one. As I say, I was just coming into a prime. After that, I went on and did other things. So, but I did. Yeah, I was just doing things from an early age, as was the likes of Martin Stone. But a lot of people in my era then had stopped because they lost the motivation, or they did get injuries, or because they were racing harder and faster. Now, Martin Stone, for example, Mr. Sport Ident, who people know as don't understand the sporting history that Martin has. If you actually look into his catalogue of what he's done, his race CVs, he's up there to me with David Bedford and Steve Redgrave, and Helene, and who else? Kenny Dalglish. I do generally believe he's up there.
Wow.
Random answers there. And but he stopped when he was 45 because his knees were shot. And he didn't want to sort of be a grumpy old git at the back, because I'm a fairly grumpy old git toward the back. I try not to be, but sometimes it's good to be grumpy. Yeah.
You can be grumpy at the back. So how have you stayed injury free all this time then? What's the secret?
I used to do a huge amount of flexibility.
Oh, right. Like what kind of moves do you do for flexibility?
Well, it happened. It really makes me smile because you go after the era of Transworld Sport, which was on Channel 4 on a Saturday morning between 7 and 8. Mm-hmm. We didn't record things in those days, but we watched it live. And like the Dragon's Back film took 5 weeks to 16 minutes of video on, a lot of different production. And that, if I wasn't out racing, that was my stretching time. So I'd get up, put the telly on, and just roll around the floor doing sort of half-hearted yoga type stretching stuff. But I was also climbing quite hard, so strength and flexibility was quite important. And then, you get the ad breaks, you get up and have a cup of tea, but it's all fairly an hour's worth of that. And even in '92, I remember, we had the luxury of camp beds in these army tents. I remember getting up and getting a brew, get some breakfast, and then getting back into sleeping bag, because it's quite cold in September, first thing, 6 a.m. and still stretching and massaging my feet in the sleeping bag, because in those days sleeping bags were about 3.5 yards wide, whereas now they're
little.
now they're something like 655 millimetres. But I'm making a joke of it, but it's true, things change like that. So one of my top tips is I won't have an hour sleeping bag next week.
You'll have a wider sleeping bag.
Well, I made a mistake in 2012. 2012, I took the same sleeping bag I had in 92. And then again in 2015, and it was a bit hot because it was a 3-season bag, so it got a bit smelly and sweaty. I've learned the advantage of quilts now, so your feet can stick out the end, and you can ventilate better. Anyway, yeah.
Okay, cool. Which does bring us nicely onto the topic of gear. What are your essential bits of gear that you just cannot do the Dragon's Back race without?
A hat, big hat and a buff, big mug. This is order of priority. Some Earl Grey tea bags. One of those little green round tubs of Vaseline, aloe vera. For when things might happen. Essential gear, windproof rather than waterproofs. It really bugs me when I see people wearing the waterproofs if it's not raining. So windproof shell or gilet, as you young dudes call them. Windproof's really good.
Gilet's the one without arms, isn't it?
I don't think it's that way.
Yeah, I think it is. It's just a little little jacket thing there.
A good old-fashioned Pertex wind shirt, so layering lots of thin layers. It works. I run quite hot, and just the last 2 times I got sunburn, even despite taking quite a sizable tub of moisturiser and sun cream, run out of that. Hate being burnt. So moisturiser.
Have you tried P20? It's a sort of an oil that you put on your skin, and it bonds with the skin, and then you don't have to reapply sun cream for the whole day. You could try that. Yeah,
I've done some of that. I'm fairly I got a bit burnt around the edges yesterday in the Dales working out there, but plodding around. But I'm fairly weathered. But also, I have invested in a sort of longer sleeve, short sleeve, high collared, light coloured T-shirt. But as I remember back to 2012. I packed in a rush in some ways, and the weather got unbelievably hot. By day 3, the only thing I had was a long sleeve, heavyweight, navy coloured merino wool.
Oh.
So that was on and off during the day, and I ended up with some nipples, which wasn't great. But that's a sporting injury you don't want to hear about, really.
Yeah. So that's the gear then, and there's a question on the live chat here. Trotrio Notortri Ultra says, which was the hardest year? Has the Dragon's Back race got easier?
No, not really. It's the hardest year that was definitely 2012. For me especially.
Why was that? Why was that?
Well, in 2012, lots of different things happened. I had done an Expedition Adventure race sort of week before, so I raced that picture that does the rounds of me in the blue and orange buff, looked particularly haggard. So I'd raced in Scotland for 5 or 6 days in very good weather, so weather beaten, and then had a few days at home, and then started 2012 because when I originally booked the race, I thought they were 2 weeks apart, but they were 5 days apart. So that explains how I looked fairly knackered. I felt quite good during the race because I was fit. But also on day 1, Shane did throw in all the Welsh threes on day 1, which he thought people had sussed. I hadn't. And we were on the start line and people were crunching these big maps looking at this enormous piece of paper. And it psyched a lot of people out. And it was a tough day. It took us 15 and a half hours. And I think me and Dewey, because Dewey came back from New Zealand for it, I think we finished 36th and 37th on day 1. We were the last people to do the full course. And I came in at 10 o'clock at night and looked at the clock. It was just dark as we got off Snowdon. We ran the descent quite fast to get it out. to get down before proper darkness, and the rain came in. I remember looking at my clock thinking I want to be in bed for midnight, because it takes time to do the do. Got into the sleeping bag, big smelly sleeping bag, and then turned the head torch off, went to turn the head torch off, and it was 1 minute to midnight. And that was about that day.
Wow.
So, it was tough. You do the Gliders and onto the Vara into Nant Peris, and then pulling right back up to Crib Got. I mean, I've seen some comments recently about why don't we just put the extra peaks in, because it's not far. It's far.
Yeah,
so,
it's enough.
But it's a huge amount of time.
Yeah.
It's 50%. So that was the hardest year for me. But I just dug deep and got better. Every year has not been quite perfect for some reason, but every year is different. I mean, last year got hard because not just the heat, but also the dryness. So a lot of the streams were drying up. It's the time in my life that I've started making navigational choices to go from stream source to stream source to pick up water. I was pruning it. I was a dehydrated prune at the end, so that was hard. And it was also hard going past the castle. And the last 3 or 4 miles was just, but you get into that mode where you just don't want it to end in some ways as well. You get post-race blues kicking in, sort of.
Because it's a nice little bubble, isn't it? The campsite and everybody coming in and the camaraderie. Just tell us a bit about when you come in from the day. What's it like? What do you do? What are the most important things to get done straight away? Shane's
very efficient. The whole camp set up, and I just helped out a bit washing pots at the Great Leighton 3 Day just 10 days ago. I went in under the radar, and quite literally was washing big pots behind the scenes, and it was great fun because it just gave me a chance to look at what's going on. When people come in, think about triathlons. Triathletes talk about transition being the 4th discipline. So you train for swimming, train for running. You've got to train in some ways. When you cross that line, you'll see people slumped in a heap and not doing anything for 20 minutes. They're just going into a pit of despair, really. You've got to get in. You will be... Basically, the system works really well. You're chaperoned. One of the volunteers subtly takes you and your bag to your tent. And what they're doing is a little welfare check to make sure you're not going to fall over and collapse. And then I get in. I carry my plastic mug in my day bag, my rucksack, so that ideally I'll just get straight into the brew tent and get some quick bit of food, fluid. And also I'm putting the windproof on, I'm putting layers on, staying warm, into the tent. And within 15 minutes, my mat's out, my sleeping bag's out, and I'm horizontal, and I'm sorting myself out. So in some ways you finish the day, and that's where the work starts. So the daytime, doing the event, doing the running bit, that should be bread and butter stuff. It's the making yourself get organised in the evening, because the more rest time you have, the sooner you start that recovery, the better it is. But it's not, it's not rocket science, but...
Yeah. No, I think you just tend to, if you know what to do, you tend to not see it as a skill, but what you've learned over all these years is a massive skill, and not everyone knows how to do it.
I think obviously there's personality types involved as well. There are some people who they'll come in and they want to go and see all their friends, they want to go and look at results, they want to query this, they want to do that, and they will put stuff on social media. And I'm sorry, I'm on social media here now, but to me, that's not an essential part. That's not a key thing which has to be done there. So just get on and do the do. Some people think I'm quite antisocial, but I'm not. I love spending time with people on my wavelength, but I'm not going to spend my time and energy doing stuff which isn't going to help the greater good. I'm not selfish. I would love to be able to wash pots in the evening and help out, but that's not going to happen. Shane won't let that happen because it's not fair. There's all sorts of reasons why not.
Yeah.
It's discipline.
Yeah, exactly. Get it done. And so, presumably, you're taking care of your feet as well in the evening. Do you ever get blisters? How do you make your feet stand up to this days and days in the mountains?
Well, it's just a bit of a freak of nature because I spend working outdoors. I spend most of the time in trainers, in wet trainers. I got a blister last time. A very deep one, just in front of the ball of my foot, behind my second toe. really, really deep. It just exploded towards the end of day 4. It just suddenly, it wasn't full depth blister, and it did lay me out for 2 weeks actually to finish. And it's because things were so dry. So I only get blisters when my feet are literally hot and sweaty.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think that was my problem on Cape Wrath Ultra as well, because you get like one little bit of grit in your shoe, and then it's just sandpaper. And it's horrible.
It happened, I thought I'd been bitten by a snake, an electric shock. It was such a pain.
Yeah.
Ruptured.
Mine felt like a bee stinging me. Like every few minutes, a bit of grit would get into the blister, and it would. It's horrible. And then I didn't wear my waterproof socks. I started wearing just normal socks and putting my feet into the streams to cool them down and to ease the swelling of the blisters. And I blame the heat. I blame the heat now for all those blisters. Because the weird thing was, I'd run 100 miles back to back on 20 milers in March, which was quite cold, and I hadn't got a single blister. So that's why I was so like, why have I suddenly got blisters on like day 1 of the Cape Wrath Ultra?
I'm quite intrigued about blisters and chafing. They say brief subject as to because it happens quite rare to me. But blisters and chafing there must be some sort of acidic chemical reaction going on as well. I know what blister is; it's fluid to protect an inflamed area. But chafing is the same. It sometimes happens for no reason, and so it must be something to do with chemical imbalance in the body. So you're losing too many salts or whatever.
Oh, maybe, yeah. I don't know. I've only ever got blisters. I get blisters in hot places.
In my arm last time.
Oh, I've never got chafing there.
Yeah, it was something to do with the armpit and the edge of the jacket. And it was the end of day 1. I went, quite a red mark.
It's so painful, isn't it?
Get the Vaseline on it.
Yeah.
Do something about it.
So you have been, it's hard for you to do these races. Do you ever think, about quitting at all, ever, on things like the Dragon's Back race? Have you ever wanted to quit on the Dragon's Back race?
No, but that's 2 weeks ago, just 6 miles of the Felsman. Because I was entering the Felsman, and then I was shaking off the cold. I went in on Friday. I thought, I'm probably not going to do all of it. And it's quite weird, because I had this great debate with myself about not starting and the great DNF, which... It's one of those social media phenomena, isn't it? I thought, well, I want to go and sample because I've only done it twice in 40 years. I started to do it every 15 years. And actually, I worked out that my 15th annual cycle will be next year, so I might go back and do the Felsman. But anyway, I did the first 6 miles. I thought I might do 2025, and I was quite prepared to do that, to do like an 8-hour day or something, and then get the bus out because it would be a good training day. And to be brutally honest, I didn't fancy, the forecast wasn't brilliant, that's what me normally, but I didn't want to be grouped up at night with people in bad weather, because that puts, responsibility onto, it just changes the dynamic. So I set off trying to do 25 miles, went up the first hill and thought, I'm going to do this, so I pulled out at 6 miles, and I really enjoyed my day. So but it's very rare. I think over the years, I think people shouldn't really enter a race unless they truly believe they can finish it. But then again, I'm told I'm elitist. But
you just said that you entered the Felsman and you thought you'd get 25 miles done. So that's you entering a race that you know that you...
Yeah, but I'm saying generally, I get worried. I get people, I'm doing next week, and then I'm doing that, then I'm doing that, and then doing that. The classic example, Northern Travers last year, with a guy who came in joint third, with Greg Crowley, who's another legendary athlete under the radar, gets things done. And this guy was faffing around, really inexperienced in some ways, versus Greg. Greg's got his business. 5 minutes in the checkpoint. This is at 165 miles out of 191. And Greg, off he went, nice and quiet, doing the do. This guy was a bit of an idiot, to be honest. I hope he's watching. And he went off and got lost. We called him back. James Thorlow, event director, you will know, actually texted me to say, get this guy back, get him to sleep, because he's not had any in 3 days. He's got time to do a navigation course with you and finish this race.
Brilliant.
3 or 4 of us tried to talk this guy around. He said, I can't anymore, I've got a triathlon. I'm doing an Ironman in 4 weeks' time. I just thought, well, sod you then, Just can't do all this thing. Do one thing well.
Yeah, do one thing well. Which leads me on to a brilliant question from Rob Jordan, one of my patrons, who says, oh, and also Stuart Smith says, Joe, you haven't touched that tea yet. So I can take that question off now because you've touched your tea. There we go. He's had 2 cups. Look there, Stuart. Stuart works with Joe, just everyone that doesn't know. Stuart Smith works with Joe Faulkner.
Stuart's also working on career events. There's a lot of backroom on the ground stuff for the Dragon's Back as well.
Yeah, so if you're going to the Dragon's Back race, you'll probably see Stu Smith, and he'll probably have a good joke for you because he's hilarious. And
it's a good thing and a bad thing at the same time.
yeah, you guys work well together. But that previous thing, what you were just saying about that guy not being able to navigate and being a bit of a liability on the course, there's a great question from Rob Jordan, one of my patrons, who says, can you recommend a good navigation course? So hit it.
There's some great courses out there, but ours are even better. I mean, I'm not big on bigging ourselves up, but 22 years ago, we were asked by the big honchos of Carrymore, Kim, to do a training course for mountain marathoners, because we were seeing people enter mountain marathons and then perhaps not coming back, having such a poor time and being out of depth. And they used to talk about, it was year 3 in your mountain marathon. And remember, these things only used to be once a year, really. It was year 3 before people had the measure of what they were doing. So I was contracted 22 years ago to sort this course out. And for 5 or 6 years, that's what we did, once or twice a year. And then NAV4 was actually formally born in 2008, the infamous OM. All our launch publicity was washed away down into the
That was, for anyone who doesn't know, that's when the OM was a complete washout, and everyone, and somebody reported that lots of people were missing in the mountains, but everybody was thankfully fine and had the right skills to be in that flooded, high rain, high river level situation.
We're safe on the hills and in the valleys, basically. So NAV4, yes. Here we go. It's me and Stu.
Yeah.
Top quality tutors.
I'm just going to put a picture of your website on the screen now so that you can see. So this is Joe's company, Now for Adventure. Stuart also works for him as well. So they do personal coaching, mountain running, guiding as well. There's a race called the Lakes Mountain 42 as well, which I have actually done, believe it or not, when I was fit and healthy and didn't have an injury. Yeah, did that.
I did, because I haven't done any updates recently. But Pennine 39's our next event in June, which is actually 37 miles, not 39, but 39 rounds with Pennine 39. And it does the classic part of the Pennine Way, so it's quite a small race under the radar, but it's that sort of wild, self-reliant, or fairly wild, it's on the Pennine Way, self-reliant race that people should be doing if they're wanting to do the bigger, more mountainous races.
Yeah.
It's so easy. I know it's more difficult to get to, but if you're serious about doing Dragon's Back, serious about Cape Wrath, Cheviot Goat, that sort of thing, you've got to do similar races. I know people can't get there, and it's easy to do shorter, flatter races, but so there's lots of decent trainers out there. It'd be wrong of me to say various trainers have copied our program and ripped off the content and put the ratio up and undercut us, but you get what you pay for. I truly believe, I know embarrassing now, but I've 2 or 3 of my tutors, the best facilitators and tutors and teachers I've ever worked with. We're not winning prizes, we're not winning races anymore, but we can do the do. And we're first and foremost, we're outdoor professionals and we teach. We don't lecture people. So end of pitch. Wasn't very good sales pitch, was it?
Yeah, no, that was excellent. I'm going to now put a thing up on the screen as well to show some people on one of your navigation courses. So this is taken from Joe's website. So there's loads of skills, including let's just get that.
We've done lots of one-to-one, and sort of courses happen generically now. So the score state's on up there. So have a look at it. I'm a bit embarrassed about the website. It's all my fault. But a lot of stuff happens on social media as well. We're at Keswick Mountain Festival this weekend. Well, I'm not actually there. But Dale's doing 2 workshops, Saturday and Sunday, 3.5 hour NAV for runners courses. And it's just that, it's hill skills. They won't really hanging around with poles, they won't really talk about nutrition and hydration, skimming over kit, the core kit. It's that mouth skills which a lot of people want and they shy away from because they think it's difficult. It's not difficult. It frustrates me that people think it's difficult. If you can use a multifunctional toaster, you can use a compass.
What about a dishwasher? Or a washing machine, they're pretty hard to handle.
Yeah. Just put the tablets in the right bit.
Yeah, that is fantastic. So, you've given us some really great advice there, Joe. Basically, in a nutshell, just go and do it. Get into the mountains, get on that terrain if you want to do Dragon's Back Race, which is pretty much, brilliant advice. And then, so I've just got a couple of questions to end with, Joe. You've done a lot of Dragon's Back races, so it's like the same. It's the same course, isn't it? Pretty much year after year for that one. Have you?
Yeah.
Huh?
It's sort of becoming the same as it settles in.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like the same thing, like year after year. Do you ever think about maybe doing the Cape Wrath Ultra, just to vary it up a bit one year, something like that?
I mean, one of the reasons I'm doing many races now is because I do a lot of work, weekend work on other races. So last night I was trying to do something for myself every 4 to 6 weeks. And so I haven't really managed it over the winter. I did Cheviot Goat was the last race I did at the start of December, 54, 55 miles in the Cheviots in the dark, in the bogs as well. So, good sort of test of mind and willpower. But a lot of my work, I can be in 3 places at once every weekend, so I'm not cutting out lots of events, but then I'm doing the days in between, so I've got the luxury of working of time off midweek. Yeah. Cape Wrath, I've always worked on it. Some of my work comes from during events, so I've got myself and Stu and some of us have been up there doing 8, 9, 10 days support. I mean, last time our role during the event tends to be roadside monitoring trackers and being on call to intervene, to the point where it's a little bit frustrating at times. And we don't often get into the wild hills. So I went back up in August and I went up all the shapely peaks that Cape Wrath goes round and goes through. So I really enjoyed that.
That sounds great. Would they not let you do the 8-dayer then? Are you just needed to do the safety side of things?
This is going to sound quite passionate. The reason, and I said this to Mike Stone this morning, and he completely understands. I'm taking part in the Dragon's Back race because it's easier than working on it. and I only sort of confirmed my entry 6 weeks ago. Ideally, I would like to go and work in the catering team and help Sandra and wash up because that's the hard graft, the campsite stuff which needs doing. But Shane said categorically if I was available, then he'd want me to work on the hills. And I've always enjoyed the journey. I grew up in Shropshire, Mid Wales is an amazing place. I've just enjoyed that journey. And it is next week's my holiday. I'm working out flat now and got a lot of things to tidy up before Sunday lunchtime. But next week's my holiday. And once we get past that first road crossing into the Canidae and the sort of circuses, stop blowing trumpet sort of thing, that's when I'll start enjoying it. So Cape Wrath, no, I don't see myself doing it.
No.
I quite like to do it in a sort of a solo type way that what's his name again? Damien and
Damien and Beth Pascal. Damien Hall, Beth Pascal. Yeah.
That's quite something really.
Yeah. That would be a lovely way to do it. Oh no, non-stop. That wouldn't be so good. I'd do it over 2 weeks or something if I was going to do it. And then just one final question. I know you haven't even done the 5th one yet, but would anything stop you just going for a 6th and then going for a 7th, or will you just keep going?
I won't do a 6th.
Why not?
I just think this is enough. Well, it's hard to explain, but no, every year there's been a little bit of frustration. Like year 1, Doobie put his knee down, his foot down that rabbit hole in the last afternoon, and we lost a huge amount of time. 2012 was like a week after the Sting. I was pretty knackered, and then on the finish, well, 2 hours after the finish line, I got some pretty tragic news. I finished on a sour note. What happened next time? 2015, 2015 I sort of underachieved. Didn't push myself out enough. A bit frustration. And then 2017 was just survival with the heat. So there's always been like, I don't want to do a nice one or totally pleasurable one. So no, but it's enough. It's enough. I won't. It's I will go and wash pots next time or on work, but it isn't what it was. The event's changing, and there are aspects of it which don't appeal to me. So, but I might. I'm only making assumptions. I might change my mind next week.
Yeah, maybe, or maybe I'll decide to do it in 2 years' time. And you have to come back and do it with me.
Maybe. There's 3 people. What would make me really happy? There's quite a lot of people I want to see at the end, but there's 3 people: Andy, Sarah, and Mel. Meant to be watching this. I won't give the surnames, but it would make my day to be at the end and see them at the end as well.
Oh, Andy, Sarah, and Mel. That's fantastic. That's brilliant.
I'd like to see Caroline and Jane there as well, because I spent quite a bit of time on the hills with them. But I could go on and list loads of people.
Ah, that's great. Well, I just wish everybody doing the Dragon's Back race next week so much good luck, and just so much good weather as well, but not too hot like last time. And I just hope that you really enjoy it, the last Dragon's Back race that you're going to be doing, Joe. And I just really appreciate that you've given up a whole hour of your time to talk to us tonight and give us loads of tips, loads of advice. And I hope that everybody puts it into practice for the Dragon's Back race next week.
Well, yeah, I hope so. It's a bit late to start doing massively big changes, but people should have everything packed. They should know exactly what they're packing. My got in the freezer. Everything's in little piles. It's going to take me 40 minutes on Sunday morning to put in the right bags. Less is more.
Yeah.
Less is more.
Yeah. Everybody is telling you good luck on the live chat as well.
Right? All right.
Yeah. And Stuart Smith says he hopes Vassos is watching this. And Mark C.
Ask me again, I won't be putting his water bottle in his pocket for him, I tell you.
Yeah. He needs to get a hydration bladder. Mark C. said it was great. Guy Greytrex said, great interview and great advice, thanks, good luck. Andrew Ryder saying, thanks, Joe. Stephen Morris saying, thanks, Joe. Jacqueline Cooper saying, brilliant, Joe, thank you, see you soon, kiss, all. And Di Wilson saying, all the best, Joe. Rich Simpson saying, cheers, Joe. Loads of people, everybody wants you to do really super well in the Dragon's Back race.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to brew at Penny Pass and also a quick brew on top of Snowdon.
Yeah.
2 brews a day.
That'll get you through.
One pot of tea a day.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Secret weapon. Brilliant. Cool. And Helen B just saying, great chat. She's going to have a look at one of your navigation courses. Best of luck, Joe. Fab. Yeah, Helen, get yourself on one of these navigation courses with Joe and Stuart. They really are the best in town. So that's great. So we're going to finish the live chat now. Thanks very much to Joe. And I'll see you all at Keswick Mountain Festival on the weekend. Woo! Cool. So say bye to everyone, Joe.
Bye-bye. Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Cool. Okay. So the live broadcast